Hey, you're watching Stryk TV Backstage Access. Hey, we'd like to thank the fine folks at Select Power Sport, your friendly neighborhood Kawasaki Yamaha dealer. Go see Bobby Joe where the blacktop meets the checkered flags. And the Courthouse Whistle Stop Cafe, located at the historic downtown Livingston. Hey, you eat yet?
Hi, I'm Mark Chesnutt, and you're watching Stryk TV.
I had a ball Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but it's all over now, and the show is Monday.
Alright, this is Angela with Stryk TV, and I'm striking up a conversation with Mark Chesnutt. Wow, it is a pleasure to be sitting here and talking to you.
Thank you.
So, how's everything going? What you got going on now?
Well, we're getting busy again this year, getting back out on the road like we have been. This will be our God, I don't know, 21st, 22nd year on the road, and
Wow.
we just hadn't stopped. You know, I keep
Well, that's a good
waiting for a vacation, but they don't ever seem to show up. And
Right.
But we're also working on some new stuff and getting ready to record some things. I've already recorded one, and going to Nashville as soon as I can and do some more stuff. And hopefully we'll have something new out this year.
Sounds good. Well, I know, don't you have it's another CD called Live at the Big D?
Yeah, we did a live album. We put it out last summer. It's doing real well. We what we did was we went back and got a bunch of songs that we recorded at a big concert there in Dallas, and that we played. And I don't remember where it was, but this show was done, God, I don't know, probably 10 years ago. And it's just that it just worked out that we'd been recording stuff for years and years, and everything on there just worked, and the energy was there, the mix was there, the right songs were there. And so we said, well, let's just put it out. And we put it out mainly for the fans and in my fan club, and to be able to pick up on we sell it on the road, and we get a lot of positive feedback, and people are asking for songs that we haven't done since that live album, so we're going to have to go back and dig them up and do them again.
You got to rehearse a little bit more,
Yeah,
huh?
I guess so. Rehearse, we never do that. We do that on stage in front of people.
That's good. Yeah, I understand. I was reading a little bit in your bio that that's where you feel the most comfortable. That's what you enjoy doing on stage.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes?
Sometimes. It's a little scary at first, but usually after the first 3 or 4 songs, it gets real comfortable. And but usually, always, the several hours right up until the first part of the show, I'm scared to death. It seems like after all these years, I would be more relaxed and comfortable
You
with it.
think,
but
yeah.
Just don't ever seem to get easier.
Well, we've seen you at a lot of the concerts here in town and in Houston, and there's a song that you were singing, but I understand your mom didn't want you to sing it. But now that you're grown now, you say, hey, I'm going to sing it anyway. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's old Conway Twitty song that I used to do. It's one of the first songs I learned when I was a kid. So it's You Never Been This Far Before, and kind of a sexy song, you know, and I won't go into it, but if you're an old Conway fan, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I remember the first day I learned it, I was so happy. I said, Mom, I learned this Conway Twitty song, because before that, the only thing I could sing was a few old George Jones and Hank Williams and Hank Sr. songs and some Merle Haggard. And she said, learn me some Conway. And so, like an idiot, instead of learning Linda on My Mind or something like that, I did You Never Been This Far Before, you know, the Bump Bump Bum song. And she,
I remember that.
and she said, now that's just nasty for you to be singing that. I was about, I don't know, 12 years old at the time.
Wow. 12 years old?
Yeah, so I still sing it and tell that story.
Aw. Well, speaking of 12 years old, let's go back a little bit. I understand that growing up, your dad kind of had a big influence, taking you around the honky-tonks, and you kind of followed in his footsteps, and with him being a singer and a record collector.
Yeah, he was a singer and a songwriter, and he never played the honky-tonks like I did. He wanted to skip all that, because he wasn't really into the nightlife partying scene, he didn't drink or anything, and but he loved country music, and so he was a really good songwriter and singer. And he went to Nashville, and he met up with some people and ended up hanging out with the people at Cedarwood Publishing Company, which at the time was a huge publishing company. And they introduced him to some other folks, and he made a few records on the D label, which was a pretty popular label at that time for an independent. And he was pretty popular around Beaumont on the jukeboxes with a few songs, and got a little bit of airplay around there. But, and so he just decided he didn't want that kind of life. He'd run around with George Jones when he was getting his career started. They were buddies, and he just didn't like the way George was acting and all the stuff George was going through, and leaving his family and all that. And so Daddy said, well, I'll just give this up and stay home. He had a wife and kids, and he didn't want to be gone all the time. He had an appointment with John Denny at Cedarwood Publishing way back then, and my brother and I were little kids. And so he had an appointment there, and so at a certain time, Daddy drove all the way, all night long, without stopping. And back in those days, there were no, highways or anything. He took all the back roads. Took him forever. He drove all night, pulled up to John Denny's office, went in there and said, hey, I'm Bob Chesnutt. I'm here to see John Denny. And he was right on time. And he said, well, John's not here right now. He'll be back later on.
Uh-oh.
And that made Daddy mad. So he turned around and got back in the car and went and filled it up with gas and went right back home without any sleep or anything. That's just the kind of guy Daddy was. He didn't put up with anybody's bull.
Yep.
And so clearly the music business was not for him. Or he wasn't meant for the music business, because he didn't want to put up with all that. And he thought, if you say you're going to be there, be there. So he came home, he had a job, and he had a wife and kids. So he couldn't be playing their games.
Exactly. Well, what did he feel in you? Do you remember where you were at when you first heard your Too Cold at Home on the radio?
Well, the first time I recorded that was in Houston. I recorded that with A.V. Middlestead at his studio. And I'd been singing that song for years in the clubs. I found it in Nashville, running around there, and I met Bobby Hardin, the guy who wrote the song. And so I had been recording several songs for a guy in San Antonio, and then was over in Houston and recorded some things. And so I came back with Too Cold at Home, and everybody flipped over it. So we recorded it, cut a little deal with A.V., and he put it out and got some local airplay. And it got things started. That's what led to my recording deal with MCA.
Wow.
And then after I signed with MCA, then I recorded it again there in Nashville. And so I've been singing that song ever since. But yeah, I've heard it. I've heard a couple versions on the radio, so it's been with me for. I still get excited when I hear it today, all these years later, played.
I bet you do. Now, when you went out on your first big tour, it was with Kenny Rogers. It was back in the 90s. Tell us a little bit about that, which I've got some stories that my husband told me when Kenny first met you, but we'll start with your story.
Yeah, that was one of the tours I worked on. I worked with several big stars back then, and I did a lot of show dates with Kenny, and I was on his Christmas tour, so I had to do a Christmas song. And that was a learning experience, traveling all over the world, not all over the country. We didn't leave the U.S., but we worked all the time. And I learned how hard it was traveling, but it was a lot easier than it was when I was out on my own, playing the honky-tonks and doing things. It was a lot easier going up there and opening for Kenny Rogers, because the crowds were a lot bigger and the venues were a lot bigger and a lot nicer. The accommodations were a whole lot nicer. And then coming back and playing smaller places, it was an eye-opener, and I realized how the big guys worked. And he was real professional, and he talked to me every night, gave me advice.
Really?
And was really nice to us. There was a night
neat.
There wasn't a night that he missed coming by and saying hi to all the opening acts and spending time with us and visiting with us. He's a real nice guy.
That's neat. This song you recorded with George Jones, Talking to Hank.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. We were at a show one night, and you were kind of telling how you were in the moment, the one microphone, and you're face to face with George Jones.
Yeah, that was nerve wracking. I'd known George for years before before we had a chance to record together, and I'd sang it at Jones Country up in Colmsneil a few times, a bunch of times actually, and got to hang out with him and talk to him. And so I was friends with him. He would get me on stage to sing with his band during his show sometimes, and Bobby Hardin, the guy who wrote Too Cold at Home and Old Country, also wrote Talking to Hank. And I don't remember who it was. Somebody said, "Man, why don't we do a duet with George Jones on that song?" I said, "Well, that'd be a great idea because I know that I love Hank Williams Sr. and so does George." And so they asked him to do it, and he said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so he came over there, and we'd never sang together before. And he didn't want to do it the way everybody was doing it at the time. Everybody does their parts, and then weeks or months or years later, the other guy comes in and does their part. Well, George wanted to do it face to face. So actually, they had two microphones, really, and they had a little glass wall between the two of us, but we were in the same room. And they had his microphone and mine. And we stood face to face, just a few feet apart, and sang this song together all the way through, just like the record. There was, no overdubbing or anything. I did it, and then we did the harmonies, and we sang together, looking at each other. And when George sings, he stares right at you, right in your eyes. And it scared the hell out of me. George Jones, my ultimate all-time hero, is singing and staring me right in the eyes and hitting all these notes. And every time it was my turn to sing, I was tongue-tied. And I screwed it up quite a few times before we got it right. It was kind of scary to have George, even to be in his presence is scary enough. But when he's singing with you and staring at you, it's like staring you down. Like, what are you going to do now, kid?
And you're like, I don't know.
So I just did what I did best, and we did.
Wow, that's
we
neat.
did several other things after that together. But he's always been a great guy. Like Kenny, he was always really friendly, and spent a lot of time talking to him on the phone and going out to eat with him and touring with him a lot in those early days, and getting to watch George Jones sing. And I did a tour with him in Conway one time, and I opened up those shows. And so I couldn't believe here was this young kid just fresh out of the honky tonks in Beaumont, and I'm opening up shows for George Jones and Conway Twitty, sitting on the side of the stage. I'd make sure I'd go sit on the side of the stage and watch. Nobody was wearing these ear monitors back in those days. It was all big monitors on the stage, big speakers. So it was like listening to records, and I heard these guys sing live every night. And that was I couldn't believe I was getting paid to be there doing that. I got the best education. I learned a lot of licks watching those guys sing.
I bet you did. Now you go from a song, Talking to Hank, to I Don't Want to Miss a Thing from Arrowsmith. How in the world did you land that?
Well, I was trying to hold on to my record deals, what I was doing, because I'd had all these hit records, and they were country. And but radio was kind of changing their format a little bit and going a little more pop, like they do every so often. And I had just finished an album, and we had a song out on the charts already, and my producer said, "Hey man, have you heard, we need one more big ballad for this other album we were recording to come out next. So we need one big power ballad. And it doesn't need to be really, really country, something real big." And he said, "Well, you ever heard that song, Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Arrowsmith?" I said, "Yeah, I've heard it." He said, "What do you think about it?" I said, "Well, I don't particularly like it. I like Arrowsmith, but I don't care for that song. That's not their type of music, and it's not mine." He said, "I think we ought to cut it." And I thought he was crazy. And I still think he was crazy for wanting to do that. And
wow.
So I thought about it, but, he was the head of the label at the time, and I didn't want to lose my deal. So I called Waylon Jennings, my other friend in the business, and I said, "You ain't going to believe they want me to record I Don't Want to Miss a Thing." And he had never heard it. I said, Aerosmith song. Yeah. So he said, "All right." He said, well, I'll tell you what you do. He said, "I think you could sing anything you put your mind to. So if it'll make you feel better, I'll go to the studio when you lay the vocal tracks down." Because when I was in there doing the tracking vocals while the guys laid down the instruments, the music, I was totally lost because I'd heard Steven Tyler, you know, the demon of screaming, wailing a wail on that song. And I thought, how in the hell am I going to, how is radio going to accept, how are my fans going to, I can't do that. And Waylon said, well, just do it like you would do it. And it took a while, but Waylon made me realize that I could do it, just be myself and not try to, because I grew up trying to sing like Merle and George and Hank. It's what I patterned myself after in my vocal stylings, and I had no way to pattern myself after Steven Tyler. Nobody can. So I did what Waylon said. I said, just quit listening to his version and do it your own way. And I did, and they put the thing out, and it was #1 for 4 weeks.
Wow.
And
imagine that.
And George got mad at me. George Jones got mad. He thought I was getting weird on him singing pop music.
Aw. Well, Mark, thanks so much for taking time out to
Thank
talk
you.
to me with Stryk TV. We really enjoyed it. And you're watching Stryk TV.
You in this moment forever. I don't wanna close my eyes. I don't wanna fall asleep 'cause I miss you.
You're watching Stryk TV. Radio contact.